With the first round of the college football playoff complete, we're going to be taking a look at a 2025 rookie mock draft. This one was sent to me. We're going to analyze the picks, analyze the players. It's one QB, so we're going to get a good look at the wide receivers and running backs and how this draft went down. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're going to be ranking the rookies. We're going to be looking at a lot of rookie mock drafts. We're going to be looking at a lot of mock drafts, getting you ready for rookie draft season like we do every year. We're going to deep dive these players. We're going to change the rankings every week. We're going to start off small and work our way up like we did last year. It's all going to be right here. Click that button. Stop missing out. But we're going to start off with the first draft pick of this 2025 rookie mock draft. Remember, it's one QB. And the first player off the board, I think many of you guys know this one. It's Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty's got a good market sentiment right now. Everybody's high on him. 2,497 yards, 29 touchdowns. And he was balling out this year. Led all college football in missed tackles forced. 192 yards per game. Has good contact balance, good vision, good approach to the line of scrimmage. And there's a lot of mock drafts with him in the first round, almost all of them. And a lot of them pinpointed to the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see how they want to work that. It is a deep running back class. I do not see him getting out of the first round. I do not see him getting out of the early second round. I see him getting prime draft capital. That is what I'm saying. I look for him to be the first running back off the board. I look for him to get good market sentiment. I look for him to be a top asset in Dynasty fantasy football off the rip. The market sentiment saying that, I mean, game after game after game, he's got the legion behind him. And I just do not see anybody coming off him. I look for the value to be up there. I see some people questioning him because he's a G5 prospect. That makes sense, but it's built in there. He's got the size, he's got the wiggle, he's got the athleticism, he's got the intangibles, he's got the production to his name. He's going to have the draft capital to his name to the point where he's going to get his opportunity to compete early. Ashton Jeanty's going to hold that value. He's going to be a prospect everybody's going to want. If he was in this year's running back class, the 2024 class, the easy RB1, and we'd have a bunch of easy RB1s in this class, actually. When you really think about it, we had a guy with a torn ACL as the first running back selected by quite a bit. Over the other running backs. Ashton Jeanty is a rookie running back that we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for a good rookie running back to come out. We've had a few good ones with Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy. But again, this class wasn't that great on the top end. And now we got a guy like Ashton Jeanty that's just going to fuel the value. It just is. We're moving on to the next pick. I think it's going to go rather standard here when we're looking at this draft, but it does get a little bit different once we get past the first couple picks. After looking at this one, it's a little bit different, which I like. They're usually a bit different December, November, early January, until ADP starts rolling out, and then people get a little bit too scared to be contrarian, and they don't plant their flags too often. But I like looking at the flags being planted because I like seeing the different thought processes of these people drafting, and then I look more into the prospect. I stay open-minded. I'm not a rankings merchant where, like, if this guy's over this guy, then it has to be. I really want to keep looking and digging into these players. The next player off the board here at the 102, T-Mac. I like T-Mac a lot. I think T-Mac should be valued very high in this year's draft, considering the talent pool in this year's draft. I think T-Mac should be valued very, very, very high in this draft. Considering what we're going up in this draft, I feel like it's a deep wide receiver class. Like, we got talent. I don't think it's as good as last year's when it comes to pure depth, but I don't think we're ever going to see a bad wide receiver class. The category of bad wide receiver class is just going to change over time, but compared to like 5 years or so ago, we're not going to get any bare drafts at wide receiver. We're going to have drafts where it might be lighter at the top end, heavier at the top end, maybe a little less deep here and there, but there's going to be good talent. We're seeing this in the high school ranks. T-Mac, ball skills for days. PFF has him listed at 6'5", 212. That's the numbers I got down there. And we'll see at the combine the actual listings and everything, but we see it on tape. He stretches out when the ball's in the air. Sticky hands. Good ball skills. I love him as a wide receiver. He can take over games. He's a dominant force out there. 2.87 yards per route ran. 13.7 ADOT. The deep ADOT's a good indicator for fantasy football because you can get those deep targets. I like that. And then on top of that, you've shown the propensity to take over games these last 2 seasons. Had a great freshman year at 702 yards, 8 touchdowns. I don't think there's really much to say about this, but the thing to say about T-Mac is that he's hands down the top wide receiver in his class, the top upside. He's going to get top draft capital. He should be drafted in the top 10 easy. Should be. Unless we're really sleeping on some of these defensive prospects or something. Haven't really dug that deep on that side of the ball. T-Mac is a player that everybody's going to want. I've saw some mock drafts where he's the 101 over Ashton, Jeanty. That makes sense when you're really thinking about the field at wide receiver and what's after him. That makes a lot of sense, and you can still dig at running back later. And it really depends on how many people were in those drafts too. Like if it's a 3-man mock draft, then strategy-wise, and I can understand that too because you can still have a sexy core players. I think T-Mac 102, 101, you can lock that up and book it. What do you want to do with T-Mac? I believe a lot of you guys are going to want him. And this next pick off the board that we're looking at here, it isn't really that big of a head scratcher. I can kind of understand it, but it's a little bit different. And I don't hate it at all. I like the prospect. I like the player. Might be a shade early for me right now, but I really like him too. So I'm going to have a lot of stock in him. Honestly, especially where I'm drafting. It's not like I'm going to be drafting 101, 102, 103 every pick. So realistically, I'm going to have a lot of them. And the guy coming off the board here is Kaleb Johnson, 6 foot 225. There's other running backs here I know you're thinking about. But when we look at him, 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. This is a stud running back prospect. He'd be the top running back in the 2024 class. I would easily take him over Trey Benson. I'm not really going to talk about Jonathan Brooks too much because he had the injury coming in. I don't want to use too much hindsight with that after the second injury and all that. But when you think about Blake Corum, Trey Benson, and all that, I would definitely take Kaleb Johnson over them. Size, just athleticism. His ability to come out as a freshman, 779 yards, 6 touchdowns at Iowa in the Big Ten, 4.42 yards after contact per attempt, getting a lot of missed tackles forced, highlight after highlight after highlight. And I can understand planting your flag on him. I got some flags planted on him. I like him in the first round. And this is a running back class that I'm going to deep dive in. And I'm going to have a lot of stock in because I got a lot of stock in last year's wide receiver class. And if you've been following the channel over the last few years, I like to lean into the strength of the class. And the strength of the class will ultimately really build those ties, will be the tiebreaker when it comes to wide receiver, running back. And then I'll also look for the values at the other position if I see people doing the same. That being said, I'm going to be heavy at the running back position. I'm definitely going to be heavily invested in Kaleb Johnson. I understand them making that pick. Also like some other players off the board. I'm not going to hate on it. But at the 104, I do like this running back too. I'm going to have a lot of stock. I think he's going to be in my range in a lot of leagues too. And I think he's got a lot of upside. I like him as much more. He's up there. He's up there. I think he's my number 2 running back off the board right now. It's Omarion Hampton. 6'1", 220. Back-to-back big-time seasons. 30 touchdowns in the last 2 years. 6-7 missed tackles forced in the last 2 years. 4.35 yards after contact per attempt. Back-to-back years with over 1,000 yards after contact. We're getting some work in the passing game. We're dominant. We got the size. Easily would be the top running back in Dynasty rookie drafts last year. I easily be over Trey Benson. Trey Benson didn't have over 1,000 yards rushing. Jonathan Brooks, coming off the ACL. Back-to-back 1,000 yards. Back-to-back 1,500 yards. Very productive here. Can grind it between the tackles. I would take him over Blake Corum easily when you're looking at him versus last year's backs. I think we got a lot of upside here. I think he's going to be drafted pretty heavy. I think he's going to be easy day 2. Maybe pushing day 1. If he lights it up at the combine, we do have some good bursts in the open field from when you watch the tape. I think Omarion Hampton is a guy a lot of people are salivating over. I think he's going to be a good draft pick here. 103 is more than likely the range for him in 1 QB. 103, 104, depending on the flag planters going on there. And especially on what's going on at the wide receiver spots. But again, I'm going to let you know this draft went running back heavy as we go deeper into this. Which I like because it gives us the opportunity to talk about these running backs and what I see. But I like the size, I like the physicality, I like the burst. I like how he can be used in the passing game. I like his overall skill set. I like him a lot. And I'm deep diving him more and more by the day. Next player off the board here, and it's not a surprise. I don't hate it. It's Travis Hunter at 105. 92 catches, 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns. The question is he going to be used more as a cornerback or wide receiver? I think a lot of people are questioning that. I'm just going to be Bayesian right now. It's December. It's December. We haven't even had Christmas yet. I'm just going to treat him like a wide receiver unless I really have to make picks on him right now. Most of those leagues that are active in drafting, they're Devy or deeper leagues that he's already rostered. So I don't have to make those decisions till a little bit later. So I can get a good feel from the draft. Honestly, looking at him as a wide receiver, he's very assertive, very aggressive, and very twitched up. He can take over games. That's what I like about him. 2.45 yards per out round. A good ADOT throughout his collegiate career. He's got good hands. We know he's going to get the draft capital. If he's going to be on the offensive side of the ball, mostly, he's going to get a lot of opportunity to work. He's going to have that sunk cost in him. I think he's a good prospect. I think 105 with some backs over him is actually a good value considering the risk there. And I think you do not want to sleep too far on a first-round wide receiver and just let him leak later in the first round because of being scared. I think having a couple backs over him, that makes sense. Having T-Mac over him, that makes sense. Of course, T-Mac, 92 balls caught. And when I think about this wide receiver class, I'm happy that I went deeper last year into the class. And now I'm looking to go deeper at the running back position. I don't hate it at all. I'm going to take these players at their spots and try to get them a little cheaper, especially once the ADP rolls out a little bit more. Once we get more drafts under our belt and look at them. Right now, the 105 spot in a 1 QB league for Travis Hunter, it's fair. It's fair. Some of you don't like it. I saw it in the comments in some of the other videos. Some of you are excited about him. I understand that. He's a very explosive playmaker. He's a very good college football player. I like him a lot coming out of Colorado. I've always been interested in Colorado. Always been interested in them in the transfer portal. We got to move on to our next pick, though. And I said it's running back heavy, and it's running back heavy. TreVeyon Henderson coming off the board here. Very explosive this year. Right situation, and he could be going off. This is a running back prospect that can really win some games for you. Can be used in the passing game. That freshman season felt forever ago. 2021, 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. We've been hit with injuries. Injuries have been hurting us hard. 11 touchdowns in 2023. Sharing the backfield with Quinshon Judkins. Looking solid this year. Looked solid against Tennessee. His stock is up. He's explosive in the open field. That's really what you want out of your running backs. And really, when you compare him, like, look at his stats here. 926, 831, a 1,200-yard season. And everybody was jonesing over Trey Benson. This guy's explosive in the open field. He's got the receiving chops to show it off. And he's a guy that sharing the backfield with a competent running back who's a grinder up the gut, he could still be fantasy relevant. 4.17 yards after contact per attempt. This is a back that I believe that we're going to get in the first round, 106 to 110 or so range, and we're going to like that a lot, especially once we're looking at the running back depth in Dynasty. A lot of running backs didn't get that injury bug this year. That being said, that's going to be due for next year, year after, and there's going to be a transition process, and we had a weak 2024 running back class. A guy like TreVeyon Henderson could be a big surprising factor going into 2025-2026 in their NFL careers. So something to look at. Our next player coming off the board here at the 107. We're staying strong at the running back position. We're staying strong with these Buckeyes. 107, Quinshon Judkins. And he came into Ole Miss, took over Zach Evans. He blew up. And he came over to Ohio State. Double-digit touchdowns. Looking good between the tackles. And Ashton Jeanty's really been so good that a lot of people ain't focusing on some of these running backs. 3.02 yards after contact per attempt. We're deep at the running back position right now. This is a guy that can hold it down for almost any NFL team in the league. He could be a great addition. He's going to be a little bit cheaper than some of the other running backs. He's a guy, like, we don't have the SEC bias here, but he was holding it down in the SEC early, breaking down early, holding down a good running back prospect that was sharing the backfield with him. Zach Evans, prospect, not a good NFL player, held him in check. That was the gatekeeper you needed to surpass. We go to Ohio State. We do all right there. We're having a good collegiate career. We're good to come out, ball out at the NFL level. We're going to get okay draft capital. That being said, Judkins is a running back prospect I'm highly interested in. I think he's being slept on a little bit. 107. I think any other year, you look at this resume over the course of his career, I think people will be talking him up a little bit more. He's a very stout runner. I think going in the right spot, too, that could really, really be an impact player instantly in fantasy football. Let's move on to the 108. Let's see what we're working at here with this pick. And we have to have some wide receivers coming off the board. And that's what they did here. At the 108, Emeka Egbuka. He is a nasty route runner, good hands. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He has a 1,000-yard season on his name. Stayed at Ohio State, 824 yards this year, 9 touchdowns. Has dealt with suspect quarterback play these last few years. And I'm looking at Will Howard, not a great quarterback prospect. I'm looking at what they had last year. Not great. Not great at all. And we're still able to stay there and get the job done. 9 touchdowns this year. Looked great against Tennessee. His stock is up. A lot of people talking him up. Has the potential to be a first-round draft pick. I think on any NFL team, he's going to have a role, and it's going to be a decent role, and he may have to build up into it until he's fantasy relevant. It may take him a year or two, but Emeka Egbuka has the talent to create separation, has sticky hands, he's a reliable pass catcher, he's seasoned, he's ready to rock and roll, can be a good wide receiver too to build up to more on his NFL team as he develops, and he's got the skills to do so. I think this is a great spot for a wide receiver like this. I think it's a great value. Moving on to the 109, we got another wide receiver coming off the board here. I said it was running back heavy. It still is. But Luther Burden, 109. He grades well. He looks well on tape. 1,200 yards in 2023. A little bit of a lower year in 2024 coming out for the NFL draft. Wasn't super dominant this year, but was still able to get the stats in there. And he is also good with the ball in his hands, running the ball. Showed that as a freshman. And he did well as a freshman. They did whatever they could to get him the opportunities. 6.1 yards after the catch per reception, 2.32 yards per out ran. I think there's some upside here. I think we're going to be drafting the first round. I think we're going to be pretty heavy there. I think we're going to have the draft capital there to get the opportunity. I think that's what's really going to matter for his draft stock and Dynasty. I think the one thing when I'm looking at rookie drafts is him versus the running backs. I want to make sure I come out good at the running back position. I want to make sure I really nail this well of running backs because we may not have a well like this at the running back position for the next couple years. That being said, when I look at this and I look at Luther Burden, we do have some upside and we do have the potentially to fall in some drafts and get drafted a little bit higher in other drafts too. I see him get drafted top 5, top 4-ish, pushing T-Mac range in some drafts. I see him going this range. I like him in this range because I feel like there is a little bit of risk. And on top of that, a lot of my teams are deep at wide receiver, and wide receiver is a position that's very diluted out to where I can play money ball with a little bit. And the running back position, I just see the forecast coming forward where we're going to see some of these running backs turn over a little bit, and we got a talent pool here. I like Luther Burden a lot. I think Luther Burden's going to be a first-round wide receiver. I think he's going to be a get that we're going to be looking at early in rookie drafts once we get into the spring. And I'm not going to sleep on him at all. I'm also going to pick my spots with him going forward at the 109. I really like the price tag for that. But we're going to move on. Now things are going to get a little bit tricky. Now you're going to be looking at, hey, this guy should have been here. This guy should have been there. I didn't like this guy. That makes sense. Let me know those guys in the comments below. I'm not in this draft. But again, I like talking ball on these players and what I've seen over these last 3, 4, 5 years or so. Nicholas Singleton at the 110. I feel like he's living off his recruiting hype a little bit, but he's also physical between the tackles. He's nasty between the tackles. I think at the NFL draft, he's going to be at a good discount. I think whoever gets him in the NFL draft is going to get a very quality running back prospect at a good price tag. Productive as a freshman with 12 touchdowns over 1,000 yards. Sharing the backfield, can hold it down. And this is a running back here with 61 catches to his name. Has some games where he went off. It was a little bit quieter this year. 3.45 yards after contact per attempt, which is fine. 14 missed tackles, though. The thing about Nicholas Singleton is I wish I had a little bit more to the resume. I wish it was a little bit more undeniable. But when I watch him on tape, when I saw him coming out of high school, this was a running back prospect I was highly interested in. I was highly interested in Nicholas Singleton. I got a lot of heavy stock in him. I think he's a very good prospect that I think draft capital will still be there for him. And I think we're going to look at him in rookie drafts as a get. And he's going to be highly competitive when compared to the 2024 running backs. He just is. And he's a very good running back prospect. I think as a prospect in the right team, right situation, carved out an opportunity early in his career, could be a guy that shows up for you. Could be a guy. Now, these last few picks, you're going to look and you may see some wide receivers you want, some other running backs you want. But this is what rookie mock drafts are looking like right now. They're very ambiguous, different players, guys coming off the board. Speaking about Ohio State and Tennessee, Dylan Sampson coming off the board. I like his contact balance. I like his wiggle. I like his tenacity at the point of contact. He's tough to bring down. 22 touchdowns in the SEC, 1,500 yards pretty much, 5.8 yards per carry, 3.6 yards after contact per attempt, 70 missed tackles. I just like him at the tackle point, at contact. His ability to keep his feet turning, his ability to keep balance, him in the open field there. And I think at value here, early second round, late first round, wherever he's going, you're looking at a running back prospect here that has some upside. Caught 20 balls. Tennessee has given us two interesting running back prospects coming out in back-to-back drafts. Dylan Sampson's an interesting running back prospect. Eyes on him too. He's a guy that can really turn things over at the next level, especially when given the opportunity. And the opportunity could be there in some of these teams, considering some of these running backs did not go down here in 2024. These veteran running backs who kept a clean bill of health throughout the entire season. One more player coming off the board to finish up this draft at the 112. And we're looking at Ollie Gordon. 1,700 yards, 21 touchdowns back in 2023. We got some explosiveness. We got some pop. 68 missed tackles forced back then. We had the DUI coming into this year. But again, this is a stout running back prospect. 225 pounds listed at PFF. That being said, we got some upside here. Where he goes in the draft is going to be highly interested. He can also take over games in the Big 12 level. That being said, this is a running back that could be a sneaky asset for your team. Could be a sneaky asset for your team. There's some other players on the board that I'm highly interested that got leaked into the second round. There are, and the running back position got pretty heavy in this draft. That makes sense, but that gave me the opportunity to talk about some running backs. I think when you look at his potential for Dynasty Fantasy Football, he caught 80 balls on his career, so he's giving you some passing chops. He can take over games. He's explosive. He's fun in the open field, especially once he can kick it to the outside, especially once he got some green in front of him. He can really find the hole and get that spacing. He can take over games. Ollie Gordon is another running back prospect we're looking at pretty hard. A running back that we're going to look at in rookie drafts this spring and be like, hey, we're selecting this guy. It might be more of the early, middle, second round, but we got a deep running back class. I think this mock draft says, hey, this is a deep running back class. I think you need to value that. I think you really need to tread water with the wide receivers. I think the wide receivers are okay. There's some wide receivers I like. I wasn't in this draft. This isn't my draft. These are never my drafts, really, because I usually show my hands in the rankings, and I like talking ball on these players. Let me know who didn't get drafted that you would have drafted over these players in the comments below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Merry Christmas, guys. Thank you for watching.